Welcome to the webinar. Hopefully, it'll be a demonstration. We're going to talk about AI, and we're not going to really talk about the ethics rules of AI. We're going to talk about practical applications in practice. I'm joined by my partner, Tom Teets, and by my colleague and friend, Alan Gassman. Say hello, Alan.
Hello. Thanks for having me here.
So, this first segment, we're going to talk about something we've covered in other topics, but we keep expanding how we're using it. And I think it's really practical and really interesting. And we have some examples of how we have all used this that I think are really practical and relevant to practitioners. Um, so, Alan, forgive me if I plug Estate View, but Estate View is a program that Alan is I guess, the mastermind and founder behind. I don't know what other words, the chief poet.
I'm
Uh,
I'm I'm also the victim of it. Yes.
Okay, so it's a software product that does all sorts of things, and primarily, I think it was started to do calculations to show the impact of different estate tax planning mechanisms. But that doesn't scratch the surface of what this can do. One of the areas that I think is incredibly powerful is the AI background check, and it's so easy to use. All you really do is input information about a prospective client or client and ask the AI to generate a background check. Alan, since you know far more about it, why don't you describe it? And then I want to talk about what we've just done with it.
Well, the AI has the ability to do 100 times better what we used to do. The old Google search, put his name in, put his city in, look at this, look at that, click here, click there. The AI is much smarter than we
And
are
faster.
and faster. And it has a way back. It has a way of looking at what the internet was. It can find a website and then go look every month for the last 22 years at that website, or find prior arrest records that have been expunged,
Wow.
or find connections to the person that are connections to somebody else where something's gone wrong. So what we found is asking AI to follow a thorough protocol on one of the major AI engines, and then asking a second AI engine to look at that and build on.
Name some of the AI so people understand what that means.
What we are using is Gemini by Google, Claude, and also ChatGPT 5.2. If I start with one of those, I get a good answer. If it's reviewed and enhanced by a second one, I get a much better answer. And then the third one makes it even better. We can also supplement that by inputting that person's LexisNexis report or a detective report. Even the AI finds things that a detective report will not find, and vice versa. So, where our law firm used to have clients consent to us running a LexisNexis report on them, we still do that, but we also run the AI report at the same time, and the AI report summarizes both. And a lot of things come up that you just would not have known about. And it's not just about your clients, it's about adverse parties. It's about people that you want to know about, that you're drafting contracts with. It's about your colleagues that you're doing a transaction on the other side of. Things come up that you just would not have expected some of the time.
I know we've covered this before, so I don't want to take a lot of time, but I think it's important to say someone hasn't seen the prior webinar on background checks. Explain why what you have done is so much more robust than somebody just going into Chat GPT or something and saying, look up Alan Gassman. The training that's involved of the AI, just so they an inkling, just so they understand why just doing it on your own is not the same result.
If you Google search and you click all 192 things that come up on that person, and then all the things that come up about the school they went to, and all the things that come up about the law firm they are with, theoretically, in 5 or 6 hours, you could probably do what AI does in 10 minutes. And
2 minutes.
Google looks at things that Bing looks at other things, and all these, and Apple looks at other things, but the AI is looking everywhere. And it's just, I have to say, it's just darn good at it. And then you can honor the client by saying, make a CV for this client, write a poem about this person, write a letter recommending this person for the Nobel Peace Prize, and then it'll just write that letter. It'll make that CV. It's so darn smart.
So, Alan, let's illustrate with a real story. I did a webinar. Actually, I did a seminar for Notre Dame for Jerry Hesch some years ago, and I remember it was at the last minute because who was supposed to present it was sick or had a personal emergency on how to ethically terminate a client and all the ethics rules involved. And Stone gave a presentation at Heckerling years ago on it, but one of the key takeaways from his presentation and our presentation was that if you can not accept somebody, a prospect, as a client, you don't have any ethical obligations because you haven't been retained. I mean, you have ethical obligations if you learned information in the process, you can't disclose it, but you don't have any responsibility to this person because you have not yet accepted the engagement. That is the ideal time to decide to terminate somebody or not accept because you're not terminating and you don't have some of the issues you may have if you've already been working for somebody and engaged by somebody in terminating that relationship. So one of the things that we pondered and now have made routine in our practice is before we take on a new client, we do two new things using AI. And one of the things is this background check in estate view because they have trained it to do all the things we want it to do anyhow. So we put in whatever information we get from the prospect. I recently had a prospect call me and he needed some very, let's just call it complex asset protection planning. And he was in Florida. So I called Alan and say, hey, why don't we co-counsel? We'll work on the guy together. I think two heads are always better than one, although I can't add anything to Alan's poetry skills. And I suggested let's go into a state view together and see what we can find out about this situation before we go forward. And we put in the name of the individual. We put in, I think we had a city. We may have had a few other things. And whatever fields you have information for, you input. The more information you have, the better. And what we found out is the individual who is asking to retain us to do asset protection planning, who had told me very explicitly and clearly, because the first question I always ask somebody if they call for estate planning, we always talk about asset protection planning. But if they call about asset protection planning and that's what they ask about, I said, what's going on? What are you worried about? What's happened? He was insistent that nothing has happened. It's just some vague stuff that may have happened in the past, and nothing is pending, nothing's occurred, and he just wants to be safe and protective in case something might happen in the future. Well, lo and behold, Alan, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to reveal any information or names. Do you want to say what happened, what we found?
Yeah, during our call, while we were discussing this, I put a state view on screen. I put his name and his city and his approximate age. And in what, a minute and a half, we knew that he was recently arrested for a pretty bad
Bad stuff.
crime. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the kind of stuff that, yeah, it wasn't financial related. It was awful. So I emailed the prospect back just saying, I'm sorry, but we cannot represent you. And we were done. Now, had I not had the benefit of that, and I don't think I would have necessarily have found that on a Google search, we may have gotten started because it was an interesting engagement that could have been good. But we dodged, I feel, a bullet. And that background check is incredible. And the fact that it's so fast and costs nothing, right? Why wouldn't you do this all the time?
So one
Just to
thing
be
I
sure.
actually want to bring up quickly, I just thought of this. The way the internet is set up, if you do a Google search yourself, it's usually regional. So if Marty or
Oh,
I
interesting.
up in New Jersey and New York did a search for this individual, it would have
Wow.
looked for people in our area. But he had the issue down in Florida where Alan is. Meanwhile, the AI background search can search the entire internet and pull anything that it sees. So it may be that we couldn't even find it because the internet has a blinder on us. We wouldn't have found it even doing the search the right way.
Think of the power of what we just described. You don't even have to ask an admin to do it. Like Alan said, what did it take? 5 minutes or less. It's,
Yeah.
by the time you called in a staff person to assist you, you could have already been done. But we knew bam like that before we got anywhere out of the starting gates. We didn't even get in the starting blocks. We knew this was a no. What a great opportunity. Now, we've used these background checks routinely since we started to discover what they can do with Alan for all clients. So I had another client who we're working on, actually worked on her stuff yesterday. Fascinating client, very nice person. Everything came back glowing. And it was very nice to see that this person had nothing bad they had done anywhere. But it was also amazing to me how they listed like most of the properties that she owned. They listed most of the entities she owned. They had estimates of her net worth. I don't even know where this stuff was found. But it was incredibly valuable to understand the client before the first meeting.
Yeah. Let me mention two other things. You can have your staff do this before you call the client and save the whole intake process, or honor the client and say, "Oh, I'm calling you. You're interested in being hired in hiring Mr. Gassman. We see you have three companies in Connecticut and one in Florida. You've been around a long time." Well, that client's going to be impressed that you did a little
Yes.
research before you call them, right?
It shows respect for the client.
It also lets you have a more meaningful initial discussion with the client because if you know what the nature of their assets are, you can direct the conversation without them even needing to start the conversation in that way.
Right. The other thing, and this is very important as well, is I say to the client, here's all the public record information on you. They know where you live, they know where your vacation home is. Anyone can, in a minute, can find out what companies you're the manager and president of. Do you want to change that a little bit? Do you want a little bit of confidentiality and privacy? And that's something to bring up with all clients, whether they want to have those things less obvious.
It's remarkable that so many people feel they've been below the radar. And with the internet and AI and all the electronic data, it's anything but. Tom, one of the things that we just decided to do a couple days ago, explain these checklists that we do for complex transactions and why we're including the background check as one of the due diligence items before a large transfer.
So anytime that we're doing large transfers to trusts, there's so
Any
many,
large transfers,
any
Tom.
large transfer pretty
Okay.
much. Think of it, and this was Marty, I will give credit where credit is due. Think of the style of corporate checklists when they do transactions or real estate closings, how
The
they
the
list all
black
the
the black
documents.
closing binder.
Exactly. So we create a checklist of all the various aspects of the transaction, and we include the funding of the trust, any gift transactions, sale transactions, trust administrations, income tax returns. So it's all in one spot, and it's basically like the Bible for that particular trust or transaction. So in order to help defray a fraudulent conveyance claim, because people are typically making large percentages of their net worth transfers, just like Marty mentioned, the client that transferred 80% to their
We
trust
didn't discuss
previously.
that here. That was when we were preparing. So
Oh, I'm
leave
sorry.
that aside. That's okay.
Okay. So basically, we will have this AI search, like for the client that he mentioned, where everything came up glowing. It shows if there's any issues that we need to proactively address to show that this was not a fraudulent conveyance. If there's anything that comes up, we'll talk with the client about it and we'll say, hey, this was an issue. It's been resolved. Maybe it's an old claim against a company that they have that's being transferred to the trust. If you have a proactive statement that shows, hey, we saw this, we knew this was happened, it resolved in this manner, this is what the client said. You now have optically reasons why it was not a fraudulent conveyance at the time that you made that transfer. Very good if a challenge comes up in the future.
So just a little broader, we always have or we're now having, we used to have, we always have had for a long time, a due diligence section in this checklist for large transactions. We get a financial statement signed by the client because I want to have a balance sheet so we can show what percentage of wealth and how it fits into the plan. We almost always have a solvency affidavit signed. I know, for example, in Alaska, if you're doing a self-settled trust, the statute requires a solvency affidavit. For the little bit of effort and work it takes, we get a solvency affidavit signed because it only makes the client look good if someone challenges this years later. And I think it's protective of me. Like if the client says that, that they have no claims and they're not aware of anything and they have plenty of money to pay their living expenses, but they don't, they just signed an affidavit under penalty to perjury. That's in there too. So we get a solvency affidavit. We may do searches, LexisNexis, lien and judgment. We may even hire, as Alan mentioned, a private investigative firm. We use a big accounting firm that has a forensic group that does this. But we don't always do all of that depending on the nature of the transfer, how much is involved, and what the worries are. But now can I plug Estate View? Is that okay?
That's just once, maybe once.
So we use the Estate View because they've trained it to do these background checks, and you get a great printout that you can save in a Word document. We put that into these closing binders, and we're going to do that all the time now. And this just started this week because we were completing a large transaction. I said, we should be doing this all the time. Because in addition to the solvency affidavit and searches, if we do them, which we don't always do, only when we feel it's necessary, the balance sheet, et cetera, we now have a comprehensive review of all these different aspects of the client's life. What a great way to demonstrate that nobody, the client, the advisors, no one had any awareness of a problem, because look at all the work we did to identify it. Alan, any thoughts on that?
No, that's a great use of it. Almost anything you do can be put into AI and improved. Almost anything you do, see, or think about, whether it's ordering from a menu at a restaurant or looking at a document. I'm an expert witness on a matter. I got, 600 pages of things to review. One thing AI did for me is I don't like reviewing double-spaced documents. I just don't like it, and I don't like the way depositions are formatted. AI reformatted them 8.5 by 11, exactly the way I like to look at them, word for word. So, and then AI searched all the people involved and brought me information that 6 years of litigation and hundreds of thousands of dollars of detective and legal fees and depositions were unknown to the lawyers who hired me to be expert. Using AI Wayback Machine, we found things on the person's website that he had scrubbed out years ago that, really were not in his favor. So I think anything you do in your meetings with staff, talking to your spouse about what you're going to do on the way home, anything you do, AI can help you. You just have to be open-minded and give it a try.
You're not worried that Marsha's going to just trade you in for some AI unit?
Between that and the poodle, she does not need me anymore whatsoever.
So one other thing we do, and then we're going to wrap up this section and go on to some other things. In addition to getting a background check, which we're now making routine, and you want to make it routine because you don't want to feel or risk being discriminatory that you're only doing a background check on somebody that's short, right? So you should do it routinely. And by the way, for all the reasons we just talked about, like it's great even if there is nothing bad, but if there's something bad, that's great to find out ahead of time. The other thing that we do is I was retained on a matter, I can't even remember what it was recently. We use Copilot as our primary AI because Copilot is a Microsoft product and all our documentation is saved in the Microsoft cloud and SharePoint. So I asked the Copilot, and by the way, we back it up into a separate, I think we use Wasabi, so it's a complete separate independent. And every quarter, we back it up onto a hard drive that's in a safe. So excessive amounts of backup, I think, all make sense. That's not our topic today, but we have Copilot do a check. So I think it was a divorce case. So I said, Copilot, find any documents or information on this name, and I gave the names of the spouses and the primary company that I was aware of. But I had already gotten some documents, which the attorney should not have sent me until I got retained, but they often do, and we saved them in a folder. I said, do not look at the following folder, but look everywhere else. Now, Tom, maybe you have an idea. When we went paperless, I think in 2010 we started the process. What do we have, like 400,000 or 500,000 documents for a small firm?
It was about 350,000, and that was after
Man,
scanning about 550 banker boxes of physical documents.
so like in a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Copilot came back and said, I searched all your files and there was no reference outside of the one folder I said, don't look in to any of these names. And then Copilot told me, which I didn't realize because I had mistakenly, and this is why the training of AI that Alan's company does on Estate View is so important. I didn't know to say, hey, look at the calendar and emails as well. When I gave my instructions, AI interpreted to only be to look at document folders. And AI was smarter than me because it came back and said, hey, Marty, don't you want to look at emails too? Of course. So I said, yeah, do that too. And AI, I didn't even have to type in to do that because AI gave me a prompt. I clicked on the prompt, hit enter, and bam, it confirmed there was nothing. Literally in less than 5 minutes, and now that I'm a little smarter and AI taught me how to be smarter, um, we can do a check to see if any of these names come up anywhere. Alan, how do firms pre-AI go about doing conflict checks?
You would just look through your client directory, look in your billing system, and that's really all you could do, right?
I remember the last time I had somebody doing a conflict check when I was trying to refer something to them, and it wasn't that long ago. It was a big firm. They got back to me like 10, 12 days later after they had a conflict check done. It took me 2, 3 minutes. I didn't even have to ask an admin because I just asked Copilot to do it. And I think what I did, especially after AI told me how stupid I was by not looking at emails, but I think what we ended up with was much more thorough than what any firm could do in terms of a background check.
Just think of the power of it. If we had, because we retain our emails, if we had an email 5 years ago with an individual where they sent us a prospective email, maybe they reached out to us, AI would have found that and made a note of it. It makes you
Wow.
more comfortable in the conflict checks that you're doing, that there really isn't anything in there.
I don't know how the old style conflict check can even work. And I'm not aware of any firms that have transitioned to what we just talked about. But that seems to be where you want to go. So we're gonna do any of you have final comments on background checks? Because what
I,
we're gonna do is segue to phase two of our discussion.
yeah, before I forget, I've put our AI, most of our AI functions on a free website for a few weeks called estateviewai.com, ESTATEVIEW AI.com. So you don't need to subscribe or have a trial subscription. Just go to that website and play with it, and it could change your career.
I
And
just
if you
want to, oh, go ahead, Marty.
you go.
I was going to say there's one point that Alan had brought up that I want to emphasize that Estate View does that's harder for us to do without having that program. Multiple AIs reviewing a result reduces the possibility of a hallucination or making something up. Because if you have an AI review the results of another AI and there's something the first one made up, there's a good chance that that second AI will say, hey, this doesn't make any sense because I did not find anything on this. So, do you want to spend the time yourself going through and training multiple AIs to look at each other and figure this out? It's helpful for you to have a framework with what you're doing here. It's just like using a form to create a document. You're not starting from scratch every single time, and it helps make things better every time you're using it.
I think a lot of our colleagues are worried about using AI. Um, a lot of smart colleagues that I know, they only use AI to the extent it's embedded in a research program or something they already have. They're not doing these things. And I think some of the ethics scares because of the hallucinations that obviously got a lot of press because they were pretty remarkable have scared some people off. I think people are concerned about trying something new and how much startup time and how much effort. Literally, if you use a trained AI like Estate View for the background checks we've primarily been talking about, there's literally almost no startup time. You hit the button for background check, you click off the information, type in the information, and hit do it, and you get a document. If you're thinking about using Copilot, and you have to make sure that the AI can access your records. Um, to do a conflict check, you're getting a more robust, dramatically more robust, detailed conflict check in 2 or 3 minutes than whatever it is you were having staff do. And if that means that the staff no longer is doing background checks because the lawyer's just doing it and you have a protocol so it's easy, then you'll find other uses for the staff that's more productive. This stuff it's not only more profitable and more efficient, it's better when used properly. So we're going to end part one of our discussion, and we're going to start a second part of our discussion into another application of AI in terms of drafting memos and meeting summaries and things like that, and talk about how that can also add efficiency. And we're trying to be very practical, hands-on, and telling you how to do this stuff, and that's what we're going to do in the next part as well. We're trying to do a program on practical applications of AI. And instead of covering lots of ground really fast, we're going to try to explain applications of AI, how we're using it in our practice, and how we feel that everybody may benefit from some of what we're talking about in terms of efficiency, cost savings for clients, better results, and so on. And the topic that we're going to talk about is using AI to summarize a meeting, to do a memo after a client meeting. We, in our practice, for a very long time, have had the practice of doing a memo or letter, depending on how complex and long it is, following every meeting. And I've insisted on that because too many times I've seen clients misunderstand the advice we've given, forget the most important things we've told them, or worse, completely twist whatever we said. If we said it's blue, they come back that, oh, you told me it was green. So having a summary is really important. Alan, when we were preparing, you mentioned that, and it's not unrealistic, and I still can happen, that it could take a month after a meeting to get a memo summarizing that meeting out. But AI, and it's still in its infancy, is an incredible tool to expedite that process. Let me tell a quick story about using AI to summarize a meeting. I had a meeting with a client and his CPA, and we were talking about all sorts of trust planning. And I said to the client, I can try to use AI. And this is one of the first times that I actually did this, summarize the meeting. I will review it and bill you for my time. But if it saves time, I'll use that as opposed to me writing the memo. And I did an AI summary and I reviewed it because there were a few nuances it got wrong. It's not going to catch, especially on highly technical things, correctly. So I'm sure I spent at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half reviewing the memo. And within a couple of days, I sent him an email with the document. And I said, this was generated by AI. I've reviewed it. I don't like the formatting or the cadence, but I didn't spend time changing those things because I don't think they're really substantive. If you want me to rewrite it, because I was a little unsure how a client would react, I can do that. I won't use the language the client used, but he called me up and said, hey, if I can get work from you for half the price and half the time, I'm fine with whatever formatting or cadence AI wants. This is perfectly acceptable. It does the job. And I think that actually, and forgive me for yapping out loud, but Jonathan Blotmacher always, when he was talking about interactive legal and the forms and documents they generate, he would kind of say that, a lot of lawyers, and we're all guilty, so it's all of us, feel that our forms or our drafting is the best, right? Everybody feels that. And Jonathan said, and I won't use the exact language that he used, but clients don't give a rat's petunia as to whether or not they have the best forms. They just want forms that work, documents that work. And I think it's kind of the same thing with perhaps AI meeting summaries. I mean, you have to review it. You cannot send something out without reviewing it, and there will be technical mistakes. But if the cadence, some of the redundancy AI seems to leave in, which will probably get better over time, some of the formatting, if it's not ideal, I think what Jonathan said about trusts and other documents is exactly how clients are going to feel about getting a memo. If it's understandable and it's clear and it tells them what they need to know, and you can do it at half the price and half the time, I think they're going to love it. Alan, why don't you talk about that and with Tom, and I'll kind of listen. Like, how do you go about it? What do you do? What are your experiences?
Well, first of all, as a practice standard for me, it's very important once I'm done with a Zoom call with a client or an in-person meeting with a client, I call in a paralegal and I walk them through all my notes. I try to take copious notes, whether I'm typing notes or handwriting notes, even if I have an AI prompter listening to me. A lot of times I'll have a law student take notes as well if it's a Zoom call or a phone call. And I go over all of that in a conversational way with the paralegal. I go over their chart because I keep a chart for every client. And then I intend to write the client a letter. And I try to write the client a letter on my way home or the way back to the office. Don't always get to it. That's going to help me remember what was said, commemorate what was said. And I always think of new things that I didn't think of. And the paralegal always says, well, what about this? Don't you see she's got a stepson? What about the stepson? You didn't mention the stepson. Oh, I forgot to ask about the stepson. So I don't think we're not trying to avoid that process. I'm not going to end that process. But that recording, my notes and that recording go into AI together with my law clerk's notes. And what comes out is a very nice outline and the first draft of the letter to the client. So that saves a lot of time. And then instead of dictate the letter on the way home, dictate the letter on the way back. Typist types it. 6 hours later, I get it. Do I have time to read it? Now I've got that letter in 10 minutes. And our prompts, at least in Estate View, have said literally, I am a 66-year-old lawyer and I want to write eloquently. I am not a junior middle school student in bullet points. Please don't put a bunch of bullet points in my letters and give me nice charts and reminders at the end.
Which
So,
function in Estate View do you use for writing letters?
dictation to letter.
So that's a prompt there that you never told me about.
Yep. Yep. The first step right now is you get a transcript of what I just said, which I can get that out of my, out of my
We're going to
mind.
demonstrate that in a second. I have it ready.
Then I just drag and paste that transcript into transcript to letter, and Estate View does the rest, following 20 to 25 pages of instructions. By giving that AI a lot of instructions, a lot of things a lot of tunnels it has to run through, it keeps pretty much on the straight and narrow. But like you said, Marty, there's always going to be something in there that's ticky or tacky or a little bit off. It mistakes charging order protection for an exemption. Then if I do that in Gemini and then I just have Claude or ChatGPT 5.2 review it, and then I see a comparison. So I see a red line of those two. It makes for more interesting reading for me, and it shows me where they think that they're apart from each other. I think I'm doing a much better job for the client, and certainly saving time and delivery time, which is just as important.
So a couple things I want to talk about quickly on that, because I'm sure that there are listeners who are going to be saying, well, what am I going to do with my time if AI is saving me all of this time? Our experience is with our clients, it's working better with them. It's not reducing the amount of time we're spending with our clients, it's helping us assist them at a higher level. So going back to document generation software, which we've been using for over a decade, I would say we were probably at like 70% document drafting time before 30% client facing. Those numbers have switched.
I'm just interrupting. Clarify what you mean. That if we spent 20 hours on a client matter before document generation software, before we got comfortable and good at using it, 70% of the time out of that 20 hours, 14 of the hours would have been drafting, redrafting, senior associate reviewing, junior associate fixing, me as partner reviewing. And then once we got integrated with document generation software, and we use Interactive Legal, we can plug them, and I don't get a commission. And it flip-flopped where now we were spending 30% of the 20 hours, and the 70% was now client-facing, like memos where we were thinking through things, which now this is going to be an evolution of that piece. But it was writing memos. It was on the phone with a client. Now it's going to be on the Zoom with the client, and we're going to see another transformation, just like we saw earlier with document generation, doing what Alan just described. We're using AI to draft the letters. It transforms what we do. It makes us more thinkers and interactive with the clients versus doing mundane tasks that can be offloaded to technology.
And that engagement with the clients, to be frank, makes them happier with us. They understand where the time went that they spent with us. We've had less complaints about bills because of that. So it helps make
Don't
you as a
jinx us, Tom.
practitioner.
Don't
I'll knock
jinx
on
us.
wood for us, Marty. I'm knocking on my desk right now as we speak. It makes you a practitioner that thinks at a higher level, like Marty said. It makes the clients happier with the work product because they were more involved in it. And I also believe that it helps the clients understand better because they are a more integral part of the process of what you're doing.
Alan, do you prefer to sit and write mundane memos or to think creatively about a client matter?
Yeah,
Take your time. You don't have to answer off the cuff.
those of us who are overwhelmed by too many client opportunities can be well served to spend less time on the mundane things and to do a better job on the mundane things.
I think the last point is so crucial. I feel, and this is exactly, and I didn't think of it to this moment, this is exactly like when we adopted document generation software. So we can sit and look at an ILS template, and you maybe use wealth management or somebody else or whatever, wealth counsel. But when we go through a template to draft a document, we can be much more creative because you have a whole menu on every screen of different options, and you can spend more time thinking about it than if you're bogged down in drafting that power to substitute, right? Or who should have it if the client is incapacitated. You can think more. It's more creative. Now, with using AI to draft memos, which is what we're focusing on here, and letters following up on a meeting, you can spend more time thinking creatively about what it will do. And there's another interesting example. And we've said that you got to be careful when it's very technical because AI can miss some of the language, the terminology, or get things wrong. A lot of what we talk about is not technical, but human aspects of planning. And AI can do a phenomenal job of that. I had a client, we just had a meeting, not with the client on purpose, but with a mental health professional, the trust officer, another attorney, about a client that has a beneficiary with addiction issues. Very sensitive stuff. And I had the meeting transcribed, and I had a prior meeting that I had transcribed. I had AI merge the two documents and give me one comprehensive memo. The first time I merged it, it came back with a shorter memo, and I said to AI, hey, you can't combine two memos and have less words. Please go back and redo this. And it did. That's the kind of instructions Alan's talking about. And I didn't use estate view, which maybe we can demonstrate or talk about. That could be interesting. But it used some very carefully selected terminology on some of these sensitive issues that I wouldn't have been able to think of writing. It actually did a compassionate job on certain aspects. Other aspects, I saw that it made statements which they were all correct because we discussed certain things that I just felt the client would be too sensitive for, and I didn't know how to prompt AI to be heartfelt or compassionate or more discreet. So certain words or phrases that I felt would be offensive to the client or upsetting, not offensive, offensive to the client or upsetting to the client, I modified. But it's an incredible result. Um, do you want to say anything, or should we try our experiment and see how it works of demonstrating this to clients? Because
One
what I
last
think,
comment. One
okay,
last comment, Marty, before we go on to that. Alan had brought up that when he does these meetings with clients, he has a paralegal in there, possibly a law student. You can think of AI as having another person at the table. It's like having a low-level associate that's also adding their 2 cents. So that's the way to frame this. It's not replacing people, it's adding more and more color to everything that's being done for the client.
But you always have permission from the client if AI is transcribing or listening. That's
yes.
our fee agreement now. They check a box. Do you want AI to track our meetings or no? Yes or no. So, everybody needs to be clear on that. The other thing I just want to mention is when I'm with that paralegal, I can say, oh, and I want AI to write a letter to the clergyman explaining what happened with the funeral. And I'd like AI to write a letter to the CPA explaining what we did from the point of view of the tax returns and the financial statement. And I'd like AI to make sure that I got it right when I told her that Montana does have charging order protection. and add that to my letter. And then it'll add that to, and then it will do all that research. It will add that to the letter, and it will give me a memo that says, Alan, you asked me to do the following, and here's the results I got, and here's the here's my sources. So I can hand that to a young lawyer or a, a law student and have them make sure that AI got it right. That all happens with that conversation with the paralegal after the client meeting. That
Couple of comments. Again, what Alan is illustrating, when you ask AI, when you give it instructions, that's how you get the product you want. The learning curve, in part, is to know how and what to ask AI to do. So if you're asking AI to do research and you get a lousy result, and this is why lay people can't do what we can do, we can go back and reframe the question and get a better research result. So that's very important as part of this. Getting stuff drafted out from a meeting, getting sample letters, even sample forms, it doesn't substitute for what the lawyer does, but just like document generation software, it helps the lawyer practice at a more sophisticated intellectual level and reduces things that we used to think were purely lawyer tasks to administrative tasks. It's really fascinating. We're going to try to do a demonstration. Tom and Alan jump in. Alan, we're going to need some help modifying this after, but what we're going to try to do is demonstrate to you how we do this. And I'd like to try to do it, and this is all unrehearsed because we couldn't. We recorded part one of this where we talked about background checks. I want to do a memo and article based on that. I'm going to try to do it in Copilot. And then if we can, Alan, let's try to do it in a state view from transcript to
Letter, I believe is what
letter.
Alan said.
Right. And we can then compare and we'll attach as exhibits to the webinar the different output results and let people see them.
nice.
Okay. And we will need some help blocking certain screens. So I'm just saying that now. Brittany, we're going to need you on this. You have to make sure nothing bad shows. Okay. All right. So here goes, folks. Impromptu, but what I think the power of this is my experience, and when we were talking in the beginning, Tom and Alan's experience, because we all talk to different people and work with lots of people all over, this is still so new that a lot of people have never done it. And we thought by getting really basic and mundane about it, it may help you understand and be able to do it and show you how to do it rather than just talk about, let's say, the ethics rules of what you can and can't do. And by the way, on the ethics rules, Tom, make a note. AI, make a note. We're going to update our standard representation agreement to have clients authorize us in the agreement to use AI and recordings of Zoom meetings. We probably already have it, but I want to make sure it's there because Alan raised a good point. And by the way, this is also something different. I've worked with firms, and anytime I get an engagement letter, because we co-counsel on probably the majority of our client matters, anytime I get an engagement letter retainer agreement from any professional, I always read it to see what they got that I don't have. And we update, if it seems like something important, we update it right after that. There was a program at Heckerling this year on collaboration, and the outline covered a lot of ethics rules that they didn't talk about in the program, and it was outstanding. And what I did is I took notes on the outline and pasted them to the calendar. And the Monday after Heckerling, we revised our engagement letter like right away. When you see stuff, that should be an ongoing process, not something you do once every 5 years when somebody thinks about it. And it's easy to do on an ongoing basis. Something like transcribing and recording meetings, I think clients should approve that, just like Alan said. And while we ask everybody, I don't think we've ever missed it, is it okay if, and they've always said yes, having it in the engagement letter retainer agreement, if you forget to ask, they've approved it anyhow. So we're going to try an experiment. I'm going to share screen. This is the recordings from the Zoom meeting. And just so you understand, and Tom or Alan, please feel free to jump in or comment, all that I did to record the meeting was click the record to cloud button. Once you've clicked the record to cloud button, within about 10 or 15 minutes after our meeting, it'll be longer when the meeting's longer, but this wasn't that long. I got an email with a password and a link. I click on the link, I paste in the password, and I come to this screen. After the Zoom meeting, when you click record in the cloud, we get a cloud-based recording, or you can record to your laptop, your desktop, and you get an email that has a password and a link. You copy the password, you click on the link, and then you paste in the password, and you come to this screen here. Then you download. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
All right, you download the files here, and you go up to your downloads, and here's the transcript. I'm going to open up the transcript. Now, there's multiple ways to do it. I'm afraid if I save it, it will show client matters. Let me see if I can just copy it. I'm going to go into Copilot. Please. I don't think this is going to work because I think it's too long. I normally save it on my desktop, on my in our system. An article for sophisticated Now, this is some of the training or instructions that I'm giving it, which is very limited because we're doing this right now on a recording to demonstrate it. What Alan was talking about with estate view is he may have dozens, scores of specific instructions to help the job be done better. Now, I don't know how to tell if everything got in here.
I'm sure it did.
If you
Okay.
notice, Marty, there's a long cursor, so it's probably all there.
Okay. Normally what I do is I save it and then input it. So here you go. Unrehearsed. I pasted the transcript from the prior part of our Zoom meeting on using background checks in AI and estate view. And I asked it to generate a article out of that for practitioners. And here it is. How long did that take?
20 seconds.
It took longer to copy and paste it into Copilot than it did for Copilot to write it.
Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to open up Word.
Well, let's talk about this point right here, Marty, because that was a great example of the additional things that AI can do.
We're going to do that. I just wanted to save it to paste it into Word. So here supposedly is already a article.
Wow. And it knows who is who.
And it's like 1,000 words long, 5 pages. And this we should turn into an article and publish it and then attach it to the portal for the webinar so people can see it and it'll show what the result is. And here are all the discussions that we had. Yes, you must review it. Now, a couple of comments on this. What this is doing is telling you where in the transcript it got this information. So this could be helpful because if something sounds gobbledygook and you want to go back and fix it up, you can now go back. And in what AI gave me, those are actually hot links. Tom, let me finish this, then you'll talk about what's at the end. So these are actual links that you could go to, I think. No, sometimes they are. When it's documents from our system, it's hot links. But it tells you where to look in the transcript, and we already have the transcript. And we'll save that and present that transcript and the article there. But let me now show you just how easy it is. Please regenerate the same article, but do not show references to the transcript. Also, do not put lines between each section of the article, because if we actually publish this as an article, which we should do, we don't want lines. Let's see what it does. And again, I just thought of not having that so I can go back and have AI modify it as opposed to having a staff person spend the time to manually delete all that stuff. But if you're using a program like Estate View, all these thoughts are already embedded in there because they thought about it and they put it into the training, so it's there. While it's thinking, Tom, I'm going to minimize this and go to the end of the article, and you and Alan can talk about what this does. Because Alan was mentioning this earlier where he said how he can get the letter to the, I don't know if it was the priest and the letter to the accountant, etc. Look what it can do.
So this was also brought up by Marty in the fact that the AI, and this was on part one, the background check brought up, and conflict check specifically brought up additional points that Marty had not thought of while creating the prompt for AI. So AI doesn't just do what you ask it to do. It can also kind of try and predict what you're looking for and create additional information for you. So these 4 points are additional work that AI is suggesting that you do with the transcript. For example, what if you want a client-facing explanation of AI background checks? Let's say you're talking with clients and say, we want to do AI background checks. Here's information on what's going to happen with that. This is now additional documentation that AI can create at the click of a button at the end of the prompt that you've given it to have additional points there. Any thoughts, Alan?
It's very, very strong. It's very strong. One thing we've done in Estate View is we've asked the AI not to ask us as many questions and to just go ahead and prepare what it believes we are most likely to want. So my secretaries got tired of saying, "Oh, I had to wait a minute and a half, and then
A
it
minute and a half.
wanted these four things." So with Estate View, it just gives you the four things most of the time. The other thing I
Alan,
want to point out is it will give you sample forms. Do not rely upon any sample forms that any AI program gives you. If you want to find a form to model from, you could ask AI to find you a form that was used in a 10K or a 10Q, and it will go into the public company filings and it may find you a form that has been used by a public company. But don't even rely on that, please. AI should not be drafting forms yet. There will almost always be an issue if it does.
what I have found interesting about the forms that it's drafted is, let's say we have a solvency affidavit. I'm going to look at what they come up with and maybe, get an idea to enhance what I have or add to what I have, or maybe it has some factual information I can copy and paste right into what I'm using. So it still can make your use of your own forms more efficient by giving you ideas. But as Alan said, it ain't there yet, but it can still be helpful.
Yeah.
Let me see where we are and see what this did. So here it's telling me what it did. It regenerated the article, same content without transcript citations, no blank lines. So this goes back to what Alan said earlier. And look, it's interesting. It gave me different prompts for what I want next. So let me open up another document here.
And just to continue the discussion when it comes to articles, there are certain publications that may give you publishing guidelines or a rubric for how you create that article. You can provide that to the AI and say, make sure that you follow these rules when generating this article. It saves you or an admin assistant from having to spend the time creating that article in the way that that particular publication wants.
So, for example, Lineberg Information Systems, LISI, which everybody in the estate planning world knows and probably subscribes to, you could have a template created that shows the formatting, the end notes, the hope, their slogan about helping people, hope this helps or something, and tell AI to put it in that format, it will do it.
Marty,
But
you shouldn't
here,
have said that. Now Lizzie's going to be upset if we don't have all of our articles to them like that.
but here, look, I with literally almost no time. When I saw the initial output, I didn't like the references to the transcript because I'm not going to refer back. I'm going to proofread the whole thing and clean it up. And I didn't like the lines between sections. Well, it's gone. It's all gone. It did the reformatting and cleaning up on its own for me. I got about 1,000-word article in moments of time from the transcript. Yes, we're still going to spend time and clean it up and enhance it. And by the way, when you spend less time writing, you can spend more time thinking. Going through something like this, you'll have more time for creativity to add creative thoughts to it. I'd like to do one more experiment, then I'm going to turn off my share screen. Alan, with your guidance, you're going to tell me what buttons to push. Let's open Estate View and paste the transcript into Estate View transcript to letter and see what it does.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so here we go, and you're going to tell me what to do. So it's State View link.
Right now, you could also do estateviewai.com, then you don't need a password.
State view
StateViewAI.com.
like that.
No,
You're missing an S in a state. ES.
it's a StateViewAI.com. So
Is
there's
there a
no,
period between a state view and AI?
no,
Okay.
we couldn't afford one.
So
So then you can click Other AI, then create a new search. You could start with Google Gemini Pro if you want. Okay. Then next. All right, so then you see there right there near your cursor, transcript to letter.
okay, so what I did was I took the transcript that Zoom generated. I had to save it onto my computer system, onto our network, which is we use SharePoint in Microsoft's cloud. And now I'm going to choose that file and upload it into a state view. And it's off. Alan, it's your system. You talk.
That works good. Did you download it? Let's see what it does. Now just click Run selected in Outlook.
We're going to do all these things, but
Let's
the
just
point
see
is
what
you
it
can
does.
pick and choose what you want.
And Alan, why don't you talk about the different kinds of letters it's creating here?
Yeah. So while it's doing this, and we'll just see what it does, because this was designed to take a letter and make it into a project. But the first thing it does is it looks at everything and it creates a letter to the client based upon what you've dictated. So it'll be interesting to see how it makes this into a letter to the client. Then it makes a letter to the client's advisors about what's been done. Then it creates a 1 week follow-up letter that you'll be able to use in a week, because all of us know we never hear back when we send a client a letter.
I'm glad it's not just us.
Then, then a staff checklist telling my staff what everyone needs to do, what I've promised: form a company, do minutes, assign an LLC interest, get Alan on the phone with a CPA. Then an internal memo on what we're supposed to deliver and when, and then a research summary memo on what got researched. So it'll be interesting to see how the AI does all those things with something that was not intended to be a letter. And look at that. It even said, sincerely, Shenkman, Gassman, and Teat.
Seems we've created a new firm here, Alan.
We've already created a new liability exposure. Before named man.
Alan, I was thinking more about getting an advance on my travel and entertainment expense account. Can you send me a check?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit, yeah, go ahead.
So just for those listening, the the webinar that we recorded on background checks was really to demonstrate how you can simply create how to use background checks. Now what we're trying to do is how you can demonstrate how you can practically efficiently take a transcript from a client meeting, a client Zoom meeting, and you can do this in any of the web programs. It's not just Zoom. We use Zoom, and turn it into all these deliverables and letters to clients. The output is not going to be what we really probably would want, because it's not a client meeting that we're having AI do all this on, but rather a webinar on background checks. But this is to demonstrate how in real time, which we've done just in this webinar, to show you how you can so easily, for no time and cost, record a webinar, get a transcription, take the transcription, you can put it into whatever AI you use. And we did it with Copilot. And I showed you how we can reformat it where Copilot can do it like that instead of having to go to an admin. And honestly, it took less time for Copilot to take out the lines and the references than it would have been for me to explain to an admin what I wanted done. And now we took the same transcript and separately are putting it into Alan's software estate view and seeing what that will generate. And keep in mind, it's not going to be quite perfect because it's sort of the prompts were designed for a client letter. And what we're going to do is put into the handouts for this webinar all these different outputs so you can actually see and compare what you can do on your own AI, what you can do with estate view, how you work with recordings. And if this is something you're not doing, I think it can transform your practice. It doesn't eliminate the need for attorneys. It enhances the quality of work we can do because some of the basic mundane work, like having an admin person draft a memo or type up dictation, or having a junior associate draft a memo from notes from a meeting, you're getting done by AI. It doesn't mean the review process isn't as critical. It can be even more critical because things can be missed. But what an incredible savings in staff and time. And oh, by the way, like Alan was saying, you get busy, you get tied up, you can't get to a letter. Well, but you've got the transcript, you got a sample letter. So if you think you forgot something from a meeting, you have all this information already. So this is all the output, which is incredible, right? Let's download it as a Word document. I'm going to do it as one document. And Alan, I'm going to open this up. You can comment on it, and then I'm going to save all of this so that people can actually see the output and assess what they can do with it.
Yeah,
So
so it's
I'll scroll through. You do the talking.
yeah, it's taken our gobbledygook conversation and it's made it a letter to a client, advising the client on what we've done. And it's advising the client on reviewing preliminary due diligence on clients. Let's keep scrolling down there. Telling it the purpose of the letter, giving it a summary of findings of what you should do when you use AI. It talks about fraudulent transfer protocols because it heard us talk about fraudulent transfer protocols.
Alan, I'm going to interject for a second. This is actually fascinating. And you can see the difference in caliber between what ChatGPT did without the prompts. But what's interesting to me about this, what an interesting thing to create like a short memo or explanatory letter to clients explaining what you're doing.
Right, right.
No, this is actually a unique way to use AI. If you're planning on starting a different program or changing anything in your firm and you're having a discussion with partners or admin staff about it, record that and use that in a transcript to create a letter to explain to clients what you're doing different. So this is a way to create communications to clients if you're going to adopt something different in your firm.
I
Right.
think you're all going to find what Estate View generates to be fundamentally different, very different from what was generated in Copilot. And the differences in part are due to the different prompts or the training that Estate View has done for AI versus the simplistic instruction that I gave. And it's very interesting because in different instances, you may want to use different items.
That's right.
Alan, keep explaining.
So here's the letter to the client's advisors explaining what we were doing for the client and what they can do to help with the client, what we've told the client, and that we need to coordinate. So we need
This
a
is
current
fascinating.
because it heard us talking about the solvency affidavit. So it's telling the CPA we need a current balance sheet, we need the most recent filed tax information. We're going to consolidate an AI background report, a solvency affidavit, and the financial data into a single evidentiary record to defer future challenges effectively. So, it's a pretty good thinker, isn't it?
This is incredible because I'm actually just finishing a series that I've been recording on collaboration because I think collaboration is so fundamental, important to what we all do, and the world seems to get more and more complex. What this just did is took a general meeting that you have with an advisor and it generates a letter to each. You could probably have it generate a letter to the attorney, corporate counsel if you're only the tax counsel, or the estate planner to IP counsel, to the accountant, to whoever, to the wealth advisor. What an incredible way to foster collaboration.
Yeah.
Really, and keep going, Alan. Here's more.
So here, let me see, standard 6 document package. I guess it's rerun the letter. It's repeated itself on the letter. Then we'll keep going down and you can, that's the same letter we saw.
Yeah, I think that you got, yeah. Oh, this is great. Explain this one.
Yep. So there's the 1 week follow-up reminder letter.
I,
So
I, I love what you said that no clients ever get back to anybody. It's so true.
So, dear client, here's a recap of the key points on the letter I sent you 7 days ago.
It's
Here's
wonderful.
what we're doing. Here's action items for you to do. Let me know when we can hear back from you. So then there's a client intake and due diligence checklist for the law firm uh, as to enhanced AI background check procedures, analyzing the results, make sure we save the report. Then conflict check, do a conflict check. So this is something that Marty could hand to his staff, and it gives them a checklist of what they need to do. Ask for 2 years of tax returns. We never mentioned tax returns. It brought
No,
tax returns. We never mentioned financial statements.
no.
It brought up the financial statements. By the way, if you insert the tax returns and the financial statements and the operating agreement, the state view will tell you where there are inconsistencies or room for improvement between those three documents.
Think
Then
about
here,
all the document review low-level associates used to have to do for that and currently still do.
yeah, you still have to double check it, but the state view is going to give you the big picture fast. And then here's my memo to staff, to my paralegal, supervising attorney. We're going to do mandatory background, no longer relying just on Google searches, closing binder requirement. Make sure when we're done, we're going to give them a closing binder. Make sure you do your co-pilot conflict. Then there's a research memo on anything that we mentioned that needs to be researched. And it wants to look into the Uniform Voidable Transfers Act.
This is great.
Make sure we're
So
getting,
actually scroll up, Marty, because there's a great point where it was talking about fraudulent conveyances and significant transfers and the closing binder requirement. We never said that a significant asset transfer was funding a trust of greater than 50% net worth. I would do this for even less than 50% net worth. So good example of you need to review what the AI is saying because it
yeah,
may create a just a result that you didn't intend from your language.
that's
But
right.
let me stress the importance of what this is doing. Nobody can remember everything. You can't think of everything. So what if you clean it up? But gee, if you forgot to ask for financial statements or tax returns, it's there. That's powerful.
It's
Yeah,
easier to correct something that it included than to remember something that it forgot.
Yes.
right.
Alan, how
It's
does
telling
it
us to
know
look
how
at
did it know to look into the UVTA?
it's just really smart. I can't tell you that that's my doing. You just, you know, it 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 reviewed our conversation and it itself brought up this issue. We did not bring it up. If
So
we
instead of
brought
me referring work to you, I can just put it all in AI and get better
right,
answers,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's smart enough to know that fraudulent conveyances, you got to look at the Uniform Voidable Transfers Act. And that Transactions Act. That's the what it's doing here is it's saying you use this keyword. These are things that naturally flow from that. So it is taking what you said and bringing it to the next level.
Yeah, yeah,
There's some redundancy, but that's easy to get rid of. And I'm sure as you keep enhancing it, you'll get rid of the redundancy. I think the reason, folks, for the redundancy is we didn't just ask it to do one thing. We said just give us the everything you can do, and some of the things get repeated because different tasks that you ask it to do when we had that initial checklist could include duplication.
yeah. I'll check
Um,
to see why it was redundant here, but
but
it's
this is a perfect example of how AI continues to grow and get better. Because now that you see the redundancy, maybe you'll program it so that if you click for multiple functions in the text or transcript to memo, it will only give you one of each, even if you've asked for repetitive things.
right,
So, but
right.
the power of this, I think, is incredible. I'm going to create a handout for the audience where I'm going to post in Word um, each of the different outputs that we had, and I'll label them so people can see what they are. And I'm not going to clean them up at all so you can see the raw output because, like we've said many, many times, you as an advisor still have to review it. We're just trying to demonstrate not just the power of AI, but how you can use it today in your practice practically and safely, as long as you review everything, um, and enhance what you're doing. More efficiency, better results, better conflict checks, better background checks, quicker termination of a prospect before they become a problem client. Um, Using AI to create quick summaries of meetings that, yes, you have to review it, mark it up, but it's a lot faster than, doing it from memory. Or like Alan said, you could dictate in the car on the way home from the meeting what it is and then have somebody type it. And then a day or two later, you get it and then you review it and you have somebody in admin clean it up. You already got your letter. You got to clean it up and review it, but you cut out all those steps. What I
Yeah.
love about this is when you get bogged down with all sorts of client matters and things you have to do, and you can't get to a meeting for a week, you already got a transcript and it turns it into a letter. You don't have to count on your memory. The other thing that I really enjoy is I still kind of sometimes take notes because I want to make sure that certain points I don't lose, but I can concentrate more on the meeting when I'm not concentrating on taking notes. Do you find that you conduct meetings any differently using AI to do a transcript, Alan?
Well, when I know I'm going to get the transcript, so I'm saying things that are going to tip off the transcript.
Bingo.
I
Yes. Talk about that. That is, I thought of doing that for this. Yes.
say,
Explain
well,
that.
John and Mary, I'm asking right now for AI to make sure that we write you a nice letter about how tenancy by the entireties works in Delaware and why we're going to use a Delaware LLC instead of a Colorado LLC to own your property. It's also going to tell you that there's a court case out of Iowa where the Iowa Supreme Court said that state law would apply, but not everyone agrees with that. But that's going to be a little research memo that I'm going to send you. And also, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we review that website at abcxyzllc.com and make a list of everything on that website that may be misleading and that may have caused you to have that problem with that company. So, I'll just say that during the meeting, and then I'll have the first draft of those two items as a result of having said it. It's gosh darn smart.
You're
But I love
creating the prompts in real time. You don't
right.
need to remember after you get the transcript to include those as prompts because the AI is going to see it as part of the transcript and use that in its prompt.
That's right.
So I'm smiling, Alan. I want to tell you why. So we've talked about, and I've been kind of laudatory about how you've created useful prompts and protocols in training Estate View AI to create a specific product that's especially tailored for what an estate planning professional would use. What we're now talking about is not training the AI. What you brought up, we're talking about training
The
the attorney.
professional.
Yeah,
Alan,
that's a
I'm
good
gonna
point.
you're gonna get a milk bone sent to you for doing such a good job. We trained you well. Can you sit up and heal? But
Exactly.
that is so important. Part of the issue with getting the results, and that's kind of what we're talking about this whole time. It's not just that I buy a subscription to something that's trained the AI to do it. We have to, just like when we started adopting document generation software, our thought process changed. Our thought process changed. Our protocols changed and made us more efficient and able to focus more on creativity than on mundane stuff. AI is doing that. These functionalities in Estate View, one of the main things that it's doing is you have all these protocols in the training and optional different AI platforms because there are a lot of differences to enhance what's done. So I don't have to do that as a practitioner. I just click a button like I just showed you. And next month, that button's going to work better because you're always getting feedback to make it better. So one of the things I do, and it's similar to what you do, and we hadn't prepared talking about this, so I didn't know you were going to say that. But what I'll do when I'm talking on a Zoom meeting, and a lot of times, like the Zoom meeting that we had that I alluded to earlier about a very sensitive client matter with a beneficiary with addiction issues, there were four or five people on the Zoom meeting. So there's inevitably times where multiple people are kind of talking at the same time. So what I've learned to do, because my first time I recorded and transcribed a meeting, it wasn't great. what I've learned to do is a couple of simple tricks, just like what you said. And it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to just say it differently, but it's the same thing you said. So what I may do is if we've talked about a tough topic about an addiction issue and a couple people were talking at the same time and it got a little emotional, I'll say, let me summarize what we just said to make sure it's clear. AI is going to just grab onto that when it's doing the letter. The other thing I've learned to do, and clients don't even know I'm doing it. There's no reason that they would recognize because it makes sense. I said, that's a really important point, Mrs. Smith. Let me repeat what you just said and enhance it a little because I want to make sure we have this noted or understood. The client thinks I'm just being helpful, but that's telling the AI this better be in the memo because it stands out. So now we can all get trained. And I think some people aren't aware and don't understand that, but it doesn't take a lot. And as you tinker with this stuff, whether it's a state view, Copilot, whatever you're doing, the applications are phenomenal and you learn how to do it better with simple little changes.
Yeah, I don't know what the rule of thumb is going to be, but it might be that instead of spending 3 hours writing, you'll be spending 1 hour reviewing and maybe saving two-thirds of the time. It might be half the time. It
I'm
will take
guessing from
some,
what we've seen half,
it
but
will
that's
take some,
huge.
right, but we have to read it. We have to review it. We have to be professionally responsible. But this really, one of the slogans that I've always really liked is try to delegate everything but genius. Find your true best use, which is maybe communicating with clients, explaining to clients, designing systems, put the magic in there, and delegate the rest, whether that's to people or computers or some combination. This gives us all a fantastic opportunity to be better at what we do and to enjoy what we do more. It is a change. It is a change, but it saves you time instantly. The learning curve here is not a very hard learning curve,
So
right?
let me add one more facet to what you said there, Alan, because I think it's a perfect example. Let's say you would spend 3 hours creating a memorandum in the past. You'll spend 30 minutes prompting the AI. So you get a good result from the start, and then you'll spend an hour reviewing what the AI created. So it's still a half the time saved, but part of the process is knowing how to prompt the AI properly. And that may take some time. And that's a new skill that we need to learn. But getting to a good AI result at the start is also part of the art of this.
Right.
Alan, again, I'm going to sort of just mirror what you said with somewhat different language, but I think what Alan said is so fundamentally important. And I found this when we were able to um, um, transition to document generation. AI is going to be light years more of a transformation than that. But to the extent we can delegate, whether it's to any combination of people and technology, we can focus on the two things that AI is not going to really do. Maybe never, but certainly not for a while. One is the human aspects of planning. I don't know when Hal, right? What was that, 2001 Space Odyssey?
Yep.
When Hal is going to understand how spouse one and spouse two, husband and wife, deal differently with the addiction issues that their son has and how they're going to react. That's something that's far more art than science. And I don't know when or if AI is going to get to that point. We can deal with the human aspects of planning. Clients want that. They need that. The second piece, the second piece is creativity. AI is not going to come up with, some of the creative solutions that we can. But if we can push away things to let AI do them that we used to have to be tasked with, it gives us more time for client interaction and more time for creativity, which everybody in this entire profession, and I'm making a broad statement, which I never make, rarely, everybody's going to like that because we can do better work, enjoy it more, find our creativity that, it's hard to be creative when you're bogged down reviewing the terms of a trust. If AI reads it and gives you points, you can jump on that point and spend a lot less time and hone in on the issue. I
That's right.
I'm done. Tom, I'm going to give you and then Alan. Any
No, you've
summary or
done.
last words?
No, the two of you are blazing a wonderful trail for thousands of practitioners on how to do better work in a better way. It's going to raise the profession. It's going to help a lot of people. A lot more people are going to be able to afford estate planning who couldn't afford it before. So it's going to be very nice for everyone. And anyone who misses the boat, they'll just be a little bit late to the party.
If
But
they don't come to the party, I think they're going to retire because I think this party is not going to be optional. I really don't.
I
And
think
and by the way, one of the misapplications that we see a lot, and it's going to get worse and worse. What we demonstrated how we put into Copilot and gave me an article because I asked it to write an article and it did a pretty good job, and we'll clean it up. We're going to publish that and send you that too. But it gave all these prompts for other things it could do, like a solvency affidavit at the end. What I am confident is happening because we can smell it, right? Um, you know, Tom, and you can paraphrase it. I don't, obviously not using names. We just got an email from a prospective client that wanted us to do like 3 complex trusts, wants them in Nevada, and wanted a flat fee that's under $5,000. I am sure that AI, they put in all their information. AI told them what they need, right? They needed a beat it trust formed in Nevada and an LLC in Wyoming, and it should be less than $5,000. I'm sure AI wrote the email to us. Comment on that because that's a bad use of AI that we're going to all have to
Well,
deal with.
I think it's just a good example that while we're evolving with the use of AI, clients are also evolving, but that doesn't mean it's going to be in a way that's conductive or protective of them. Because just like, I mean, I think a good example is WebMD for decades have been used by people to go to their doctors to say, I have such and such an ailment because WebMD told me so. This is what clients are going to be using to come to us to say, I need this, this, and this, just like they're ordering off of a menu at fast food. That's not what we're trying to put ourselves out there as. We're counselors, we're helping the clients, and we need to help educate them of AI is a great tool, but it's not the be all end all. It doesn't replace the guidance and the judgment of what we have here because they're not getting all the options from the AI. Final point that I have that's close to that is just look at the evolution that AI has had over just the last couple of months, let alone since it was introduced a little bit over 2 years ago. Even during this discussion, we've thought of ideas as we were talking to each other of additional ways to use AI. What we've said here, all of our ways of using AI may not work for you or your firm, but there are going to be unique ways in your practice and what you do with your clients that you can use these concepts to make AI work better for you and give you a better practice that makes you happier in what you're doing.
I'm going to ask all the people viewing this to do me a favor because we all want to learn. Email any of us and tell us what you were doing for conflict checks, how it was being handled, how much staff was doing it, how long it would take, and what they actually were able to look at. And try, if you have AI that can access all of your online documents, try it the way I suggested using, let's say, Copilot if you're in the Microsoft cloud, and let me know the difference in what you think and what you do. I think that one aspect of practice, which is critical, conflict checks, can be transformed like that in an amazing way. I'd love to hear just about even that. And obviously, we welcome any input, comments, or thoughts because, like we've kept saying, we're learning and thinking of stuff as we go because it's evolving so quickly. Oh, Alan, okay. Tell them where to
all
get a state view. Come
yeah.
on.
So right now it's absolutely free to try our AI, estateviewai.com, or we have a website, estateview.com, and our actual program is at estateview.link. But anyone can email me if you want information on anything. And as Marty said, we're very open to input as we go along and develop this. We want as much input from practitioners as possible. And also thanks to our subscribers for helping us pay our programmers.
And by the way, that's the same thing. I still know a lot of colleagues that draft using their own forms, where they have a Word document and they have somebody, an administrative person, marking it up. One of the benefits of using a document generation software program is there's thousands of lawyers around the country using the same program. If we find a mistake, we email them and say, hey, we think there's a mistake. Sometimes they've emailed us back, thanks for the thought, but you missed the point, and here's why. Very informative for us. Other times it's, oh my, we're going to deal with that right away. But think of the power of using your form that 5 estate planners in your firm use versus using a form that thousands and thousands of people are using on an ongoing basis to vet. The same thing with AI. I showed you how I thought this was a great comparison. What I could do out of Copilot, it's a very helpful tool, and I'm going to keep using it. But if I'm generating a client letter, it may make sense to use Estate View because of what's been trained the AI to give a better output that's more tailored to what I want to do. So I may use Copilot if I'm drafting an article based on a web meeting. I may use Estate View to draft a letter to a client based on a Zoom transcript. What a different way to practice. A year ago, we would have talked about none of this. And can
Right.
you imagine in 5 years what it's going to be?
Right. But go ahead and check your forms on Estate View. Estate View doesn't learn from what you put in. That's between you and the AI. But if you're using your own forms, go ahead and put them into Estate View and ask it for any obvious errors or ambiguities. It will find ways to improve your forms so they can be a little bit better. And if you're using your own forms, it may be in the next year or two that they'll be automated much easier than
With AI.
with AI. Yep.
Yeah.
That's not here yet today, but that may be here in 2 or 3 years. But with the Estate View AI, play with it because you can put your document in there, put in the email from the client telling you the changes they want, and it'll make the first draft changes just like a good paralegal would have. And then somebody needs to look at that closely, but it is a time saver.
That reminds me, Tom, we actually put some forms in just to see what Estate View did, and it came up with something on a healthcare proxy in a particular state that we need to look at. And I'll talk to you
Yeah.
later about that. But that's an example of exactly in real life what Alan has said. All right, I think we can go on for another 2 weeks, so we're going to just stop, Alan. All right, we welcome input. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear specifically about conflict checks and what you're doing, but we'd love input and responses on any of this because this is like the brave new frontier.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining, everyone. And just keep in mind, this is all for educational purposes. Don't do anything based on what we just said. Take care.